Welcome back to another episode of the Caffeinated Librarians. I'm caffeinated today. I have coffee for once.
I drank one of those 2 Red Bulls. It said it's supposed to vitalize your mind and your body. I don't feel vitalized at all.
Your brain, like,
out of
No.
control.
you're using more than 10%.
And it's the sugar-free one.
Oh.
It's the sugar-free one. So I think you get really the rush from the sugar because I don't feel much of a rush.
Boo, Red Bull.
I don't like Red Bull. So.
I only got it because of the move, and I thought I gotta work at Osning tonight, so I was like, and I was at the deli this morning, so I was just like, let me just grab one. I haven't had Red Bull in probably 5 years, but that was a much different scenario.
I think it'd be funny if we did an episode where we all drank Sleepy Time tea beforehand.
Let's do
Hey,
it.
you know, the
drowsy?
anti-caffeinated librarians.
I like
just-
that. I love
Caffeinated.
Sleepy Time tea. It's good stuff.
I'll throw a UN in front of the guy.
Got the little bear on it and his little pajamas. It's nice.
Apparently, they were connected to
Very good.
some cult or something. I don't
Really?
know. I keep getting sent an article
The
about
bear
it.
or the
Not
company?
the bear.
Oh.
Twinnings.
But the company that owns the Sleepy Time.
Twinnings,
Oh.
right? Twinnings.
No,
Yeah,
it's-
right?
think
I don't know.
No, it's Celestine. Yeah, it's not Twinings.
Or Auntie.
But
Yeah, I'm
honestly,
sorry
the
if
bear
I'm,
being part of the cult would have been a lot
If
more
I'm slandering them,
might
I
be
keep
the
getting
leader.
sent this article and I keep failing to read through it. So
Well, get on that, Joe.
So there might be something in the tea.
no.
No? All right, good. What makes you so sleepy though?
It's the herbs used.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's definitely the herbs used, and probably psychology.
And also cult prayer.
Fluifinol.
Colt Prayer will do it.
Don't listen to Simona. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
So for today's episode, we're going to go a little serious for this one. We're going to talk about Banned Books Weeks, which starts September 18th through the 24th. Unfortunately, our library will not be open during this time, so if you want to get your banned books fixed, please check out our website and check out some of the titles we'll talk about today.
We'll also be open at an alternate site for you to pick up your
Yes.
materials and your print jobs and everything like that. That's 906 Route 6, Mapac, New York,
I'm glad you know the
10541. Yes. It's right down the street from where we are now.
Yeah.
So, what is Banned Books Weeks? The Banned Books Week.
It's a week where we ban books, right?
No!
Oh.
No. So Banned Books Week celebrates the free, as stated
get
by
into
the ALA, which is the American Library Association. Banned Books Week celebrates the freedom to read and spotlighting current and historical attempts to censor books in libraries and schools. And we know this is also a big time in our lives in the U.S. history where we are seeing more than ever more books getting challenged. And so it's very interesting to see some of the trends of why books are getting challenged and also, why they're getting banned. It kind of shows, I think, what people are upset about.
It shows
Or
where we
think-
are right
or
now
think
in
they're
our
upset
nation's
about.
history. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll pass this to Simona because she's also got some facts.
Does anyone else think ALA missed an opportunity to be ALAA, the American Library Association of America? Dodgeball reference.
A lot.
Jeez.
No? Nobody?
Well, now that you've suggested it, I'm sure they'll take it into consideration. Just
Haven't
you
watched
wait.
it.
They're going to rebrand. So I went to the ALA website, and they had the top 10 most challenged books for 2021. So the first one is Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe, I'm assuming is how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. And the reasons for being banned or challenged, LGBTQIA content, and because it was considered to have sexually explicit images. Lawn Boy by...
Now, does it?
This
It
was
does,
a graphic
yes.
novel.
Now, what defines explicit?
But it's
Does-
for what I will want to qualify, and I think sometimes this is the issue, because I know that this probably appeared on some reading lists for your kids. I'm assuming hopefully it would have been high school, but Genderqueer is an adult graphic memoir that reflects the actual life of the author and their experiences. It is sexually explicit in that and I don't know if I can actually say.
You're fine.
Okay. So you see her their sexual encounters with a girlfriend. there's talk about like masturbation. So yes, it is graphic in that sense, but to be clear, it's written for adults. And I think sometimes the issue is, and I don't know how much leeway like school librarians have with certain things or with the lists, but I think as a parent though, it's up to you to do your homework.
Yeah.
There's
and also,
yeah.
books are made to be a conversation.
Yeah.
Especially books that are recommended during the school year. I know
Yeah.
a couple parents who come to the library every year when their kid has to read a new required reading, and they read it alongside, which I think is usually
Yeah.
a fantastic idea, just to take some time out of your day to
Yeah.
understand, because sometimes kids have a hard time understanding some concepts or like what exactly is going on in these books. And so it's nice to have a parental figure actually look at the book and be able to have a conversation.
Or the book is just
Oh.
really boring and you need somebody to read along
And
with
you
you.
can see the lead.
Here's my whole thing with banned books, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more. But, you know, if you don't want your kid reading something, be a parent and step up and say, you can't read that. But my values as a parent might be totally different than yours.
Yeah.
So what gives you the right to tell my kid what they can't read?
Right, and that's like what me and Simona
Yeah,
talked
it-
about, yes, on Tuesday. It's like, yeah, your standards or values or morals or whatever may be different from anybody else's, but for you to then push those values, morals, opinions, whatever, onto other parents is crossing a line in so many ways. It's not even funny.
It makes a personal problem into a community problem, and
Right.
that's, yeah, it's a very very short-sighted thing. And
Yeah.
too, like, also, your teenager knows what sex is.
Yeah.
I highly doubt anything in genderqueer is
When
going to
your
really
child
shock
leaves
them.
home,
Yeah.
when your child leaves home and goes to school, they are projected into a world of other teenagers who are also exploring themselves and trying to also understand the world around them.
Yeah.
But they're not going to listen to the adults all the time, and they're going to talk to their friends with all sources of media going on. You have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, stuff like that, YouTube, streamers, influencers.
Yep.
You know, all these people are going to be making jokes, innuendos, and also talking to people on Reddit and all this other stuff. And so they're constantly exposed to these things. Children's movies nowadays even make like jokes about some of this stuff, or at least a lot of the cartoons that are coming out on Cartoon Network, Disney, even Disney, and other things are slowly starting to gain traction
Yeah.
into more modern day, you know, what
Yeah.
kids in the modern day want to see, which would be more LGBTQ representation, or maybe it's diversifying the cast a bit more than being just like white cartoon people
Yeah.
all the time. They want to feel represented.
Yeah.
And so that's what teenagers do. They're always looking for acceptance in something.
And I think another thing with like the uptick of banned books that we've seen, it's a reflection on reality. And when a parent who, or a group or an organization that is really dismayed by that and wants to ban it or censor it, they feel that they are protecting their children, when in my opinion,
It's harming.
if they do that, then you're making your child naive to a very harsh world. They should be exposed to some aspect to the realities of the world. Otherwise, they're not going to be prepared.
And you
So
can't
it's-
hide history.
No.
And a lot of these books, and whereas the majority of the books that got challenged and banned in 2021, there were like, you know, LGBTQ plus titles. Some of them were also dealing with, like, you know, racism and through the eyes of somebody of color.
Well, I mean, I saw the list as well. One of the books, I don't remember what the title of the book was,
I have them up here, so.
but they were banned because it had shown how Japanese Americans were put into essentially
Out of Darkness?
No.
I'm trying to look.
I think it's like the rising of the empire or something like that. I don't remember what the book was called, but it was banned out of one of the libraries I don't remember even the name of the library, but it was banned because it was showing how the government during World War II had essentially sent Japanese Americans into internment camps, which were really like almost concentration camps, like the Nazis in Germany were doing to the Holocaust with the Holocaust. So to not allow your child to read something like that, something that actually happened in this country,
Yes.
is a wasted learning experience. It's a wasted like conversation you can have with your child. I feel like it's a wasted opportunity, and
It's very wasted. I know that the Diary of Anne Frank for years was
Yeah.
even challenged because you had a lot of people who didn't want their children learning about the Holocaust, or there were a lot of Holocaust deniers.
Yeah.
But so like again, that kind of goes back to my point. Like I don't while I agree with both of you, of course, like if you choose that for your child,
Yes.
Yeah.
that's fine. You do you. But like, don't choose it for another
Right.
child. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
and I always use the example of my own parents. When we were more religious, there were certain things we didn't do. So, for example, during Halloween, there used to be Halloween class activities. My mother would just request that I not participate, but she didn't say, I want you to prevent every child in the classroom from doing this because I disagree. My mom didn't do that.
Right.
She just asked that we be removed from it or given a different coloring paper or whatever.
That's in North Carolina. They
Yeah.
do that for when it comes to biology, and they talk about evolution or reproduction.
Yeah.
There's a waiver a parent can fill out saying that my child.
Yeah.
Well, and they'll be given like an alternate assignment and sent to a different room, so they don't have to.
Right.
Same thing for
Yeah.
sexual education. If the parent
Yeah.
doesn't want them, there should be a waiver.
But
Yeah.
I was reading something, and I cannot recall what book it was, but it was a book that I think they wanted to remove from a school library. And there was a parent who was speaking, and she was saying that when she was younger, I think she had been sexually abused. And she said, at the time, I had no language to describe what was happening to me. And she said, think about how many children are in the same situation I was who may not be able to access this book because you deem it unacceptable, but that could be the book that gives them the courage to speak to someone and gives them the language to explain what is happening to them.
Yeah.
And as I was talking to Katie when we were doing our podcast episode, even YA books in general have changed so much.
The content has definitely matured more as
Yeah.
well. Now there's like sex scenes going on in YA books
Yeah.
nowadays.
I mean, there still are some where they're dubbed like cleaner YA, where
Yeah.
there's like maybe kissing. If it's a love scene, they call it a fade to black, so you don't really know what happened.
It's alluded, but
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
like-
But there are some books where they will be a little bit more explicit.
Thank you for throwing in a movie reference so I can understand.
Twilight.
Oh my god.
Is one such
No,
novel.
he's talking about Fade to Black.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm
and the
sorry.
moving pictures thing. Amanda called Joe and I illiterate before we started
I
recording.
did not call you illiterate. In
Sorry,
this
I didn't. Yeah, and now I'm starting to question whether that is the term that's been used, but that's how I refer to it. Where basically say, and they kissed, fade to black, and
Next
then
chapter.
then the next day they wake up and they're smiling at each other, but you're like it basically you have to fill in the blanks and you know what happened.
Yeah.
Then there are some books that are more explicit. And I was even thinking about another book that is frequently challenged is Laurie Hulse Anderson's Speak.
Yeah,
And this
that's
is
a
a
big
very
one.
old YA
Yeah.
novel, but it deals with
All her books deal with
Yeah.
a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
but it deals with a young girl who is raped at a party by I think it's a football player.
Of course.
And she does not, I think she confides in a friend. The friend doesn't believe her. The rumor spreads that she's, a slut, that she's lying. And due to the trauma and as a result of the rape and as a result of her classmates turning on her, she doesn't speak anymore for most of the novel.
Yeah.
Eventually, she gets the courage to confront the guy who raped her, and I think she does tell someone eventually. But that book has been banned or challenged because it deals with a sexual assault. And I know that for many, reading about something like a sexual assault can be triggering, can bring back those memories. But for many, it can be healing to know, yes, I experienced this, but like the character in this book, I can overcome it, face the person who did this, and sort of move on. Not that you forget the trauma, but you're able to move on. It's important. And as Amanda said, many teens are already aware of many of the things that you think you're sheltering and protecting them from.
No,
Especially,
they know what's going on in the news.
Yeah.
They
know
watch
what
you
their
for
friends
you.
are looking on. They talk on Discord. They know what's going on.
I
They're
mean,
part
like,
of whole
even-
giant communities
Yeah.
online.
I mean, even just growing up with social media not even really
No.
existing, just that you heard things in the
Yeah.
hallway. Like even in
That's
my
how
high
you
school,
know what
right?
to follow
You-
and what your
Right.
opinion is going to be, or what you
Yeah.
were going to think about what your opinion. It's
Right.
based on what others think.
Yes.
And that defines who you are. That's one of the first instances of deciding what's going to define you is
Right.
how do you feel about this subject. And it gets kids. And what books do, they are their own communities. So the logo for the slogan for Banned Books Week this year is that books unite us, censorship divides us. It's about freeing it's talking about it.
Yeah.
So whereas a lot of these books dealt with, like one of the books, like I think like Speak, where it was banned, was the number 8 most challenged book in 2021 was called The Bluest Eyes by Toni Morrison, which does, and the reason it was banned and challenged was because it depicts child sexual abuse and was considered sexually explicit. Was a required book for a little while, if I'm not mistaken. And, whereas you may not like it, it happens.
Yeah.
And there is an author out there who is writing about their life, something they experienced, or writing somebody else's voice
Yeah.
to talk about these things. So I know we've been talking about, how this affects like parents and children, but it's also important to also know that it also affects the writers.
Yeah.
Writers write what they want to write, and this is a story that they feel, it's their story, whether it's fiction, whether it's nonfiction, if it's a memoir, if it's a graphic novel, it's whatever format they want to present it that they feel looks good in their mind's eye. This is their thing.
Yeah.
That's how they feel, and they're writing it down, and they're selling. They don't have to sell it to you. They could, but they are going to because maybe they want that idea out in the world. And so when you censor and when you challenge and ban these books, you're not only censoring your children and other people's children from having a conversation about things. That's why book clubs exist.
Yeah.
You're also censoring one person's individual thoughts and telling them that their thoughts are completely wrong.
Yeah.
And not to say that you have to agree with everyone's beliefs. This is what America was basically kind of founded on.
Yeah.
Was the beliefs that, sorry, I saw Dana in the corner like waving at me. You are all, it's like, we love our First Amendment rights. We love our Fourth Amendment rights. We love our rights to be able to speak and present our ideas to the world.
Without being persecuted for it.
Without being persecuted for it. But now we have witch hunts. I'm going to throw that word out there. Witch hunts for authors and, graphic novelists, artists, movie makers, film writers. As Lewis says, I called them illiterate earlier, but I did not. I was also trying to incorporate, because whereas the ALA has statistics and is focusing more on literature, they also focus on all other kinds of media and how much of it was banned or challenged in the year. And movies did make up some of that. And so it's one of those things where...
If I could ban a movie, I would ban Bubble.
Stop it! It was a book before it was a movie.
Bubble?
Yes.
Oh, I bet it was.
But you
a horrible
also,
book
it's like,
too.
it's somebody, it had to have been written first before ever being, produced. Some producer reads the script, either likes it, thinks it's going to make a great film, pitches it to somebody else who reads it, and then it's up to a director to be like, oh, hey, I'm going to make this a movie. Or whoever does it. I don't know the full details of movie production. That's not something I'm in depth with. But every movie starts off as a written piece of work. Someone worked hard on their vision to create a story that was either incredibly, like, you know, sad, compelling, either really comedic or not. It's still someone's shared vision and ideas and opinions.
Yeah.
And people still talk about it. You guys have no, it's like people have no problem talking about movies the way they do online. But God forbid someone, you know, one person out of a group of like 200, like, everyone's like, oh, I really like deep diving books and doing this. And everyone does a deep dive of it. But then you get the one person that's like, you guys shouldn't read that book because it's this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but these things are made to start a conversation sometime.
Yeah.
Or a majority of the time.
Yeah, and I think also, like, one thing I will say, and this goes for either side, because either side can join the bandwagon of wanting to ban something or censor thing. And I remember Hillary told me, I don't recall the library, but I think they're no longer keeping Bibles in their collection because someone complained. So just be aware,
Just don't read it.
Yeah.
just be aware that you cannot support something when it suits you, because think about it, it can go the other way too.
Like this year, one of the
Yeah.
required reading books for one class was Where the Crawdads Sing.
Yeah.
But every woman loved, like, you know, everybody who picked up that book absolutely loved it. But that also has,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken,
I didn't see Where the Crawdads Sing on the list.
but it was an intense novel about a girl who's
Yeah.
accused of committing murder, and it does have to do with an affair, a
Yeah.
potential
And
affair.
the author allegedly, I think, isn't the author under investigation?
She is,
in
yeah.
real life?
Yeah.
So, but it's one of those
Not
things.
saying anything,
Everybody
but
loved
just
it,
saying.
and so if everybody loves it, then it's acceptable to read in the school.
Right.
But God forbid, there's a book like my unit in high school was very different from
Mm-hmm.
most of them. In North Carolina, we decided to my English class, along with two other ones, decided to do a whole unit on genocide.
Mm-hmm.
So all our books
Nice
that year.
lighthearted topic there.
Yeah, whereas
For middle
everybody was
schoolers?
over here reading, like, you know, Lord of the Flies and reading fiction I wanted to read, I was forced to read books like My Forbidden Face, which is the one that stuck out the most to me because it was the most, like, it was the better of all of them in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my opinion. Where it dealt with a girl during the Taliban when they were starting to, you know, become a bigger influence, and her parents were gynecologists, and they went after them, and it was her escape. And it was a real story, and it was a fantastic story to hear about her struggles coming to America and what she went through.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't just that. Our whole project, in order to graduate, was called the Around the World in 80 Days.
Mm-hmm.
You had to pick a country, but the only countries we could pick in my unit were based if the country had history of genocide.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I picked a country I actually went to, which was Romania.
Mm-hmm.
But they were very difficult to look up because they had a history of the Holocaust, and they had denied it for years.
Yeah.
Don't come at me. This is just what happened in high school. So, whereas it's like stuff that I normally would not read or care, or think that I wouldn't care about, became a unit, but it became a discussion.
Yeah.
About these countries and what's going on. Things I didn't even know about. The Taliban was something we knew about because of, like, you know, 9/11,
9/11,
and it was becoming more
I
part
have
of the
a
media.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you were reading about genocide in that unit, and I don't know if you remember, if you don't remember, it's okay. Did you look at the Armenian Genocide?
I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
we did Their Eyes Were Watching God was one
That
of them
is-
too.
Not about genocide.
Maybe not. Maybe it's not that one. It was there was some other book. It was like high school. That's like 10, 12
You were
years ago.
going like 10 years, almost over 10 years ago.
So it's one of those things where
You guys are old.
I wouldn't talk, Lewis. You're the same age as
I'm
me.
Oh,
30
crap, I
years
said
old.
my
You're
age
only
already.
2 years older than me.
On this episode, I said my age. Damn.
But, you know, it was one of those books where, as I said, it's not something normally if I was in like a bookstore or in a library
It's not
that I
something
would
that
pick up
you
the read.
would gravitate
But it was
to.
something that we talked about that was important for things going on in the news and, you know, spreading awareness. Was there a political agenda? I don't think so. I just think that there was a talk. Ooh, the lights are censoring us. But that was during that time.
Yeah.
So
The only reason why I bring up the Armenian Genocide is because I did a history report on the Armenian Genocide for one of my history classes in college. and there has been a lot of censorship around it within the Turkish government, and that they've denied that it happened when it did happen. So it's, again, just a form of censorship. That's the only reason why I was asking.
I don't think so. As I said, this was like, I didn't know any other school that was doing it. I had friends here in New York, and they'd never heard of, like, this kind of a curriculum.
Yeah.
This was like a one-shot thing. I don't know if they ever continued it. But also it was North Carolina, and it's not very diverse there.
Yeah.
So I think they focused on, like, things that were more in the media, or things that were more like, kind of we knew about. But so I don't think the Armenian Genocide ever really came up as something like literature-wise.
And speaking about, because this actually happened to me when I was at the youth services desk, and this is when the book Marlon Bundo came out.
John
Marlon
Oliver's
Bundo.
book.
Yeah,
That's
and-
actually been a challenged book.
And
as
I will
well.
be honest, I had no clue. I just had a parent came up to me, and this is gonna be a little acting time, and she's like, "What is this?" So in my mind, I was
Looks
like,
like it's a book
"What
about a
is
bunny."
it?" Yeah, I was like, "What is it?" That's what I said in my mind, and I just like stared at her. I was like, "Should I know this?" I thought she was like quizzing me.
Yeah.
It was basically like a parody children's novel.
Yeah, but
it was actually a very cute children's
It's
book.
about a gay bunny who decides to wander around the White House, and maybe he explores elsewhere. But that's what it's essentially is about. I didn't know that.
It's a real bunny.
Yeah,
It's like I think it's
so-
based on someone's real.
Yeah,
pet
it's Mike
bunny.
Pence's.
So I don't know. I forgot what I said to her exactly. And she says, she prefaced it by saying, "I'm not prejudiced."
Huh.
I love that.
And she says, like, basically that I have gay family
Those are
members.
always the people that need to say that, right?
Yeah.
The people that are, and
But,
the
um,
ones that say
but-
it.
When you
The
start it off with
justification.
it, it's
But,
never.
but
It's
she
like the
said,
same
I'm
thing
not-
when they say, "I don't mean any offense, but."
Yeah, when
so-
you hear
About
that
to drop a
but,
bomb.
it's like,
And she said how she had gay family members, but she didn't basically think that her child or children in general should be exposed to this topic. And she says, "Can't you put a sticker on it
God.
or stick it someplace else?" And she was saying basically that she remembered a time when you could safely browse and not have to worry about these kinds of topics. So I was trying to be diplomatic, and I think I did a pretty
Do
good
you
job.
complain of the fact that
Yeah.
like, we have a TikTok, for those who don't know, and one of our coworkers, Quanch, is quite prolific.
She does a really
on
good
it.
job.
She does a very good job, especially with our manga collection. Do you know how many complaints we get that we put stickers on the books?
Oh,
People that,
yeah.
like, collectors are constantly like, "Oh, the stickers."
It's
and
like-
we're like, "Shush."
And there's like I realized like way to ruin a book with a sticker, and I like how she politely says it's a library copy, and she puts the smiley face emoji. But yeah,
You're like,
so I said, we trust that parents will, be able to look through a book. I said we're not in the habit of isolating or segregating books based on content. I was trying to be diplomatic,
fair.
I said, but she wasn't too satisfied with that, so she proceeded. I think maybe a little complaint form was filled out. The board had to look at it. But the reason why I bring it up is because our then colleague at the time didn't want to collect Mike Pence's daughter's book for political reasons. But I said, you can't have one, not have the other,
Yep.
and you can't complain when one is, you can't do that as librarians.
Right.
And the book was eventually ordered. And my point in also bringing this up is, like, because I even had a family member says, well, why can't you label certain books so that, I said, because this is not the personal library of Simona Torgrosa, this is a public library. And I said, your
Wow.
personal library,
Yeah.
you curate whatever you want to read. A public library is for the public, and the public does not necessarily mean it's limited to your community. It's the public. That is who we collect these books for. And the beauty of freedom of choice is freedom of choice. If you don't want to read about gay bunnies hopping through the White House, don't read about gay bunnies hopping through the White House.
You should though. It's delightful.
It's super
really
But if you do, read it. If you don't want to read about a kid who abuses a tree and then finally realizes the value of that tree when he's older.
I was going to ask you about that because I've never heard of The Giving Tree being
No,
on
the
the
Giving
banned
Tree's just
list.
depressing.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Giving Tree is a great book, Amanda.
It is. It's very sad.
Don't
though.
want to. Yeah, of course it's sad.
It is sad, but
but
that
it's
is
a great book.
What purposes is that on the
Shel
banned list
Silverstein
for?
has been.
I think
this isn't his only
misogyny-
book,
That's
too.
not
misogyny.
Shel Silverstein.
Yeah, it is Shel
Oh, is it Shel
Silverstein.
Silverstein?
Yeah.
Oh, there's
Shel
that
Silverstein,
famous-
I think, has had several
Throw that face up. Yep, there it is.
the nose.
The face that has launched all these challenges. No, so essentially it's been cited
Launched
because
many a
of
nightmare.
like misogyny,
The nose.
promoting ingratitude towards mothers. I read another one where promoting the idea that a mother must give everything without any desire for gratitude, which
Oh my
for
God.
those who may not be familiar with this book, it's a book about this young boy throughout every stage of his life and this tree who is so giving that eventually when the boy returns, now he's an old man, he's sort
lived
of,
life.
He's nearing the end of his life, and he finally realizes this tree, which is now a stump, has given so much. And the tree says, all I can do is give you my stump, rest on me. And he sits on the stump, but he finally at the end appreciates this tree, which has given him so much. That is the moral of this book. It's not to be ungrateful. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
That's not even the first of Shel Silverstein's
No.
books. There's
No.
like the
Yeah.
one
Where
it's
the
famous-
sidewalk ends.
Yeah.
Also, has been banned for reason of
It told kids to break the dishes to get out of cleaning them.
yeah. It was thought that it promoted misbehavior among children when it's a book of poems
And
and
these books are
illustrations.
still on the ban list?
These are banned
No.
challenge lists. Some of them still are, or at least they
What
have
are we
been.
doing, people?
Yeah, I know.
The Light in
Giving
the
Tree is
Attic.
like one of the
Yeah.
Light in
most
the Attic is
beautiful
another one, too.
stories.
Yeah.
But like even this one, because this is a nonfiction book, which is obviously part of our collection, and it's called "Sex is a Funny Word." It's essentially designed to help kids navigate the changes in their body, which are natural changes. Woo, scary.
These are things that we
So,
can't avoid other than by giving them medicine to stop it.
I'm
But
sorry, I didn't mean to get whatever, but
it's okay.
it's I think also like I had an English teacher who said something very profound, or at least I thought it was profound. And he said that in Europe they are not afraid to, like, in terms of sexually, to be very sexually explicit, but they may not be as explicit when it comes to violence. Meanwhile, in the U.S., we don't care about
We
violence,
love violence.
but
Yeah.
sex is like, ooh,
Taboo.
don't talk about it.
we're slowly getting there.
You know-
Game of Thrones is paving the way.
Game of Thrones definitely.
It's paving the way.
I remember,
HBO.
speaking of Game of Thrones, I remember when they were pitching it, they said we wanted to pitch it to an organization that would not shy away from the violence, the gore, and the sex. So they said HBO.
Which is funny because HBO did censor a lot of the old stuff they used to show.
Yeah.
They got rid of it, but that was, I think, for different reasons. Or no, they literally said they didn't want that on the platform anymore. I think the new owners of HBO were like, no, get rid of that.
Do you know do you remember what it was, or?
I'm not going to go into it.
Oh, okay.
It was
But
late night HBO.
Oh,
Oh,
They used to
Got it.
have that,
gotcha.
and then like my boyfriend's parents still have like, cable.
Yeah.
And so that stuff
they
isn't
were
shown
looking for
anymore.
it?
And I always wondered, I'm like, whatever happened? And they were just like, oh, the people who bought out HBO were like, no, get rid of that. And so they don't do that anymore. So, but yet they love Game of Thrones and, Sex and the City and, all these other shows, Girls,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And
to be fair, there's a big difference between
There
the three
is.
shows you just mentioned and HBO's old late night stuff.
it's true.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
true. It's true. It's true. But, yes, I digress. So, we're getting there.
Awkward.
It-
Radio silence.
But it is true that in
Awkward
Europe,
turtles make awkward.
in Europe, I know that
babies.
sex ed classes are very different, and they're started at a very young age now.
Yeah.
In some European countries, I think like Norway and Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
they start them off in like kindergarten.
Yeah.
They start talking about it, and they have the lowest, teen pregnancy rates,
Mhm.
death among.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, I can remember growing up though too, because that makes a lot of sense. Because I remember growing up and having questions about that topic, and I would ask my mom, and my mom would not shy away from.
Oh, my mom was super open. She's like,
Yeah.
what's up? What questions you got? Sit
Yeah,
down."
yeah, she would openly talk about it with me, and she's like, but she also gave me like a choice, and she's like, do you want to know the truth, or do you want, and I would,
Sounds like how all my conversations start.
of course, and then it's like, of course I go say, well, I want the truth, and she would tell me, and I'm like, Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was not the case.
I remember reading a story. It was like a conversation between Maurice Sendak and the guy who created Mouse. I forget the author's
I know
name.
who you're talking about.
But yeah, and they were talking, and like Maurice
That's a
Sendak
book
was
I
like,
should've
yeah, I knew a lot as a kid,
Yeah.
but I could never let the adults know because then they'd be scared that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very true feeling. I think
Yeah.
everyone can remember things as a kid they were aware of, but they
Mhm.
couldn't mention that they were aware of it. Because,
Right.
oh no, my
And
parents
that's
would
the
be mad
scary
if I
thing
knew
about-
that.
Yeah.
It creates this sort of dissonance, and I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
think that's a good thing. I think
No.
there should be a lot more openness. In
It
terms
would
of
make having a parent-child relationship be a lot easier if parents would just assume that their kids already know things.
Yeah.
It's like my mom told me once she got kind of mad at me, and she was like, "I know my daughter doesn't use bad language outside the house." I'm like, "No, Mama, I don't." She's like, "Shut up." She's like, "I know once you leave this house, you're out there cursing like a sailor."
Yeah.
And I'm like, she knows. It's like one of those
Yeah.
things you cannot prevent you can't be there for your kids 100% of the day, because once they go to school, they're no longer your child.
Yeah.
They are their friend's friend, and they're like Timothy going to school, and they are who they want to be when
Yeah.
you're not
So-
looking. So that's why these books, I feel like.
Why are sailors the famous cursors?
I think
Cursing like a sailor.
Yeah, why
It's a good
is
question.
it?
I think
You know,
because
I
of
feel like
the
the
language-
military probably has an equal amount of cursing in it, right?
Yeah, it's not just segregated for the sailors. It's for the
Yeah.
Navy.
I think
you
it's
know,
just an
like they go to
expression.
different
Curious,
countries
but I'm
and they're-
curious about it. You know,
Yeah, where did it
what's
come
the
from?
origin? Why were the sailors?
I could
the,
look that.
The
Well,
filthy
Amanda's got the.
ones?
Amanda's got the computer.
You got it. But I was even going back to what Amanda said about, peer groups and exposure. I remember going to high school, and I know teen pregnancy is a major issue in this country that we still haven't figured out how to resolve, or
Literally what I'm talking about, that's why.
But
It's because for some reason people think that abstinence works and
yeah,
it doesn't.
and I was like, I remember there
You can't be a
were.
hypocrite, especially when you were the people who did it too. That's what my
Yeah,
mom. That's
exactly.
what I prided my mom in, is that she told me flat out. She's like, "Now would I prefer you to
Mm.
wait until you're married?" She's like, "Yes." But she's like, but she knows that she didn't do that.
Right.
And so she's like, but
Well-
I can't be a hypocrite. So that's why
Right.
when you are recommending things to children or teaching them about safe,
And
being safe, my mom was always like, just make sure that you're with someone you trust, and that also there's mutual trust in the whole thing.
respect.
And she's like, just be safe and stuff
Yeah.
like
Well,
that.
my mom was the same. She's like, because she was very open and honest with me, because number one, she never had those conversations with my grandmother growing up. It wasn't a topic that was ever discussed, and she wanted me to have as much knowledge as I could growing up.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
does, it does
And didn't
help
want to
later
be
on,
and
too.
did not want to be a hypocrite either.
No,
So
but the reason why I brought it up is because also we have the,
yeah,
That
sex is a funny word.
But I remember one of the first things on my tour in my high school was we were shown the daycare center. Now, I remember thinking, we have a daycare center? And then I moved on. I was like, okay, fine.
College, yeah. It's
No, this was in my
This was
high school. My high school, we had a daycare center. And we had a daycare in my high school. And I knew plenty of girls that were pregnant in my high school. And I saw them and I was like, and then I moved on. It's like the world,
You get over
continues
it pretty
turning.
Quick.
It
I don't know.
happens.
It's not exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I knew girls, and the reason I bring it up too is especially when you're dealing with books that are talking about specific topics, whether it's sexual harassment, sexual assault. Not that I didn't experience any of those things, but I knew girls that did. I experienced boys being inappropriate or saying inappropriate things, whether it was to me or to other girls that I knew. And I think having the language to be able to understand what is going on, because even to this day, there are adult women where we have to second guess, well, should I think that's a big deal? Maybe it's just me. So being able to articulate these feelings, being able to access resources that give you this is important. So when you're trying to censor it, you're taking away, in many regards, agency from that individual. And these topics need to be discussed because they are real.
They should not be shunned.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be banned or censored.
Yeah.
Or they shouldn't be viewed as a dirty topic that should
Yeah.
never be talked about, because
Yeah.
that's also dangerous and what am I trying to say? And unproductive.
And speaking of movies, a recent movie that came out, Turning Red, which is about a young Chinese-Canadian girl who discovers that in her family, the women turn into pandas.
Red pandas. We should.
Red pandas.
Red
Red
pandas.
pandas.
Hence
Not
the
related.
title.
Red pandas. That they turn into red pandas, and her transformation is regulated by her moods. But this film was controversial to some people because it's a metaphor for puberty, and there is a discussion. There's a scene where the mother says, has the red peony bloomed? And she starts showing her pads and tampons.
It was the first representation, like one of the first representations of normalizing that, girls go through puberty and this is a normal
And
thing.
people
It
lost
sucks, but
their
it's
And
not.
we're in
minds.
2022.
Yeah.
And people lost their minds
Oh my
over
God.
this.
Yeah.
Like,
They were-
I was like, what's the controversy about a girl who turns into a red panda?
And I told you about that.
Yeah. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, you have got to be
But like
kidding
that's
me.
just like
Yeah.
a fact of life. It's like
Right.
periods
because-
happen.
but-
What are you gonna do?
And I mean, both of you guys have sisters. You grew up in a household where that was the norm. The norm. What am I?
Girlfriends. who
Your
have
girlfriends,
them.
yeah.
Stuff
So
like
I mean,
that.
it's like, but it's like society. And I don't know about society in like Europe or anywhere else, but in our society, it's a dirty, gross thing that happened to girls and women, and that it should be brushed under the rug and never spoken about. I mean, when my mom got her first period, my grandmother took her into her bedroom, gave her like what a pad would have been, which was like a plastic suspender with a gauzy pillow attached to it, and went here, and didn't explain anything to her about it at all. So this
Saying
topic
it's not an
really
awkward
irks me.
conversation because it's like, oh God, here we go, it's an emergency. I'm not saying that any of these things are like, as an adult experiencing, like it's your turn to explain it now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not an awkward time.
Yeah.
It's like it happens.
Yeah.
And you got to be prepared to be like, okay, here we go. We haven't rehearsed this, but I know what to do, and I should be able to teach people
Yeah.
what to do.
And like when I was probably 12 or so, I was coming on 13 where my period did start, and my mom was very proactive in talking to me about it
Yeah.
and about what happened because of her experiences of it not being talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And also another book that was written in this.
Involved moms for the win.
Yes.
Involved moms.
There was the book. Is it Hello God? My Name is Margaret.
Yes.
And that deals with a young girl who gets her period, and that was one of the reasons why it was challenged and people wanted to ban it. So discussions around menstrual products or periods in general are still a taboo issue. Like I saw it was funny. I don't know how true this is. It was on Twitter, so I'm just saying that's where I saw it.
I got in trouble for talking about it.
Yeah.
Just mentioning it.
And
once.
there was an advertisement for a tampon, and there was this government official that called it sexually explicit. So I was like, and this is me, I'm like, really? I said,
Yeah.
what is it? Why? And it's because he said it resembled sperm. So, and this is probably going to be censored. But
That's a warning in the beginning.
that's a beautiful misinterpretation of everything happening.
I
there.
loved it. I was like, I don't get it.
I want to also point out too that I think it wasn't until a 1981 or 1982 commercial with a very young Courtney Cox with what's the brand? She was advertising a brand of tampons, and it was the first time that anyone had said period in the commercial.
Oh,
So
Well, yeah, like, so, and the reason why I hope we're not going too far off topic, but the reason why I bring that up is
Censorship.
because books have been challenged based on this topic, the simple topic of a period. Like I said, the film Turning Red, many people thought, like, I even read reviews basically that it was explicit, it was inappropriate, and I was trying to, for the life of me, figure out, because I started watching the movie, it started glitching, so I couldn't finish, so hopefully that was fixed. But for the life of me, I could not figure out what is so bad about a girl who turns into a red panda. And then I read, I was like, oh, it's because
people thought that the red panda itself represented solely her period.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that being one of the sole arguments. There was like, oh, it's an allegory for, her period. And I was like, no, this is just normal puberty.
Mm-hmm.
And even another book, and I think also what's interesting is that books are challenged for the very, reasons, for example, the Handmaid's Tale. It's been challenged because it's sexually explicit.
It's not meant for
it's
not a YA book.
But the point is, though, is that the whole point is it's a society in America where women are regulated to their reproductive function.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to... It's sometimes you're challenging books for the very sort of ideology that's being challenged in and of itself. So, sometimes I feel like hitting my head against a wall. That's the point. Yeah. But that's one of the reasons why it's challenged, or that it's very violent. Well, it's a totalitarian society where if you're gay, you're publicly executed. If you're a woman who can't reproduce, you're called Margaret? Basically, you have to be like a caregiver to those who can reproduce. If you're deemed sexually deviant as a woman, you're called, I think, a Mary Magdalene, and you're sent off to these work camps where you can also be prostitute. It's not supposed to be a cheery world.
It's not a good world.
No.
So and I remember I read it in high school. I didn't like it. Maybe I couldn't really appreciate it at the time. But
now that it's getting a 5th season, man, they have been able to milk one or two. Oh, I think the sequel was relatively new, the New Testament.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things where I'm like, you got 5 seasons out of this tiny little book.
And I also mean, and therein lands the double standard, the hypocrisy of censorship and book banning and challenged books. It's like. And that, I think, why I have such a physical reaction to banned books. It's because, well, if you don't know anything about the book, you just object to a character or one scene in it, and you go to challenge it or complain about it or want to ban it, then it's like,
well, there
what's
was
the
recently,
point of it?
I think it's a very good topic because Joe brought it up, the guy who wrote Mouse, Art Spiegelman. I got his name. Very similar to Shel Silverstein in a sense. I know you said Shel Silverstein and then the guy who did Mouse.
It was Maurice Sendak, not
Sendak and Spiegelman.
Yeah.
All these S's. Mouse was under after being a book that won an award. It had a sequel graphic novel. We have it here at the library. It came under fire, but at a school library because of its it talked about the Holocaust from the point of view of mice, which kind of in retrospect, I think one of America's most beloved animated films is An American Tail. The first one deals with mice during the Russian, they were coming from Russia via the Holocaust, getting to America for it. It is so sad, but the second one is so fun.
They go west.
Oh God,
it's so much fun.
Yeah, but which is kind of a weird way for me to be like, oh, well, they're talking about the Holocaust in
Right.
American Tail. I mean, the cats are literally.
The cats are the gangsters taking
and not only
advantage
that, even
of.
in Russia, they're like the police. And you're just like, but they're talking about it here.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Mouse was criticized. Mouse was a graphic novel that was a young adult to adult graphic novel created beautifully by somebody, who thought in order to engage with children or to make it, not.
It's
but
more
animal.
accessible.
It's more accessible. Yeah. It's a great way to start a conversation about the Holocaust, and it's all from the eyes of mice. Which I think sometimes the best way to instead of using people is using
Yeah,
anthropomorphic
and
animals.
it does bear saying that it is based on Spiegelman's father's experience
Yeah,
as a
that
Holocaust
was,
survivor.
like,
Which
So-
I think
Isn't like his
even-
mom as well? I read that it
yes.
was like his
I-
parents'
I-
experience.
I believe it's framed around him interviewing his father.
Yeah.
but-
Okay. Okay.
But
didn't know that.
I'd also like to point out, too, as a quick note, where do challenges take places most of the time? Do you guys know which,
What region of the United States?
not region, but what institutions?
School libraries.
It's school libraries.
School libraries. School libraries have actually a smaller budget for their libraries.
Makes
And
sense.
most of the time, like, I actually spoke to someone recently who works as a school librarian, and their library is literally just a bookshelf on the outside of the actual library, where they normally use it now for, like, media studies, to be able to, like, be computer labs and stuff like that. They often don't have as many books. If you go to, like, Mayapack High School now, I'm like, I've been there. It's like one room that's big. It's mainly there for people to come after school and study, or to use computers if need. Not even after school at that
Yeah.
point. It's
I mean,
during the class period,
Yeah.
downtime. It's the downtime room when
Right.
you don't have a class.
Well, I mean, throughout my 4 years of high school, I never went into the library for any reason.
I worked in my high school's library while I was there. I volunteered.
I didn't like reading at the time.
When I was there, as high school went on, they made the library more and more unpleasant for some
Yeah.
reason. It was like they were trying to discourage you from going there, and it's like,
there-
why?
And I don't even think at a
Another
certain
thing,
point
you
it's
think
not
it
even
would be a place to go if
mandated.
you needed one of your required reading books, you know, at
Nah.
least that much.
Yeah.
So
If
you,
the teacher wasn't giving it to me, that was it.
You weren't
I don't want
reading
this
it?
beat up
Wasn't
book.
reading it.
So, you know,
Yeah, the teacher-
44%.
Yeah, that's a
In
high
2021
percentage.
were school libraries that were being challenged. And as I said, I'm like, I think it bodes awareness. 37% were public libraries.
Mm-hmm.
But still, the fact that school libraries, with such a small budget, try to get some of the more popular books in their library. They're not catering to everybody's taste. They're trying to cater to what's popular.
I did just criticize Mayapack High School Library, so I will throw it back to them. They did carry some very cool stuff. I read some great books there. Where I first read Good Omens, where I first started reading Vonnegut. I read Breakfast of Champions there. Like, I don't know. That's a cool book to
They
pick up.
try to go for
in
popular
a school.
novels, either whether they're modern or they're older, and mainly older books. I do have to say, I agree with Joe. I'm like, my high school's library, I volunteered in mine during the time I was supposed to be in journalism. I was the book reviewer, and so I got to sit in the library all day during that class period. No one knew my name, but I think there's a lot of love that comes from, maybe not in the modern sense anymore, because the budgets keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller for school libraries, which they should extend more
Yeah.
of, because sometimes public libraries are kind of far away from places, and we get patrons here from all over the Mid-Hudson who love coming to us because of our collection, but to have them travel so far is kind of a pain in the butt. So
Well,
school libraries should at least have, like, either the required readings, there with them, or they should have some popular novels. Remember when you used to go to school and that was one of the field trips you got to take was to your school's library,
Yeah.
and you got to, like, check out
Elementary
books.
school.
book
Elementary school
fairs.
library. That was all
Ugh.
the elementary school library, the
I
book
got-
fairs. I always begged my mom for like the $5 to get like the 3 books that I wanted from my elementary school library.
I picked up Dracula for the first time in my high school's library. Got criticized for it, but because it was the devil's book
Oh, jeez.
by a bunch of evangelical ladies.
I got criticized for reading Harry Potter. Like one girl
Is that a
said,
devil's book too?
she said that is witchcraft for children, and I literally felt so horrible as a person. I was like,
Yeah, but it's cool.
oh my god. But
It's not real, it's
I wanna be a
fantasy.
but
No, I
it's
don't, not anymore.
but another thing I wanted to draw attention to too, which is another serious aspect, is that there are public librarians and school librarians who are being attacked
Oh, yeah.
for defending the right to read and the freedom to read. So I want to acknowledge that there are librarians who are being attacked, who
Yeah,
have
there's-
lost their jobs.
We're kind of seeing a lot of. It's important to talk about Banned Books Week, and we'll
Yeah.
end on this note here. Sorry. It's important to talk about banned books, not just for like a week, but in general. Teachers are put on this planet,
Yeah.
are trained You know, people want to be teachers, and they should be respected. They're not trying to hurt your students. They're trying to, like, you know, they're being teachers. There used to be a time when you could just go to a teacher and have, like, an actual dialogue to learn something.
Yep.
These teachers have to go through these curriculums, read these books, understand these books, and have a conversation with your child. If you yourself don't like the content, maybe it's up to you as a parent or someone to actually read the books on your own time and explain it to your child the way you want to have it explained.
Right.
But you're not going to change these curriculums unless you have a conversation with your school. You shouldn't say just on face value, oh, well, this book I know is sexually explicit. Read the book.
Yeah.
How explicit is it? Is it really explicit? Or are two people, like, you know, smooching?
Yeah.
And that's what you think explicit is? No.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, and I'll end you because I know we're at 3:00. But there was, like, I was reading reviews of this book, and it was like, they give you reviews for, like, sexual content, thematic value, and one sexual content was 2 kids kiss. Maybe one was a peck on the cheek, and I'm like, okay, fine. I understand for some people that's whatever.
Disgusting.
But I was like, okay, if that's, like, as sexually explicit as that book gets. But, yeah. So, as Amanda has said, your teachers, your school librarians, your public librarians are doing the best that they can
They're
for
doing
their
their
students.
jobs.
Yeah.
They're doing their jobs. Please support them in this. Support your school libraries if you have one. Support your public libraries.
And I'm sorry that we called out parents so heavily in this one, but according to the ALL statistic, 39% of people, which is the highest percentage, who initiate challenges is actually parents.
Yep.
39%, and 24% are the patrons. The rest is all, like, boards. Only 1% are students. In 2021, only 1% of students actually challenged or tried to ban a book. But 39% of that is actually parents.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fear, and I get it, of, like, you know, what you want your kids to read. But Banned Books Week should be, like, a great starting point to take a look at the books in the past, even scary stories to tell in the dark. There's an awesome documentary about why that book series keeps getting, like, you know, every year they keep trying to get it banned or challenged, because, to be fair, the images are, you know,
Frightening.
horrifying. And the stories themselves are horrifying, but we love spooky stories as kids. They're spooky stories to tell in the dark.
Yeah.
Read books with your kids as, like, you did when they were children. Read the children's books. Talk about it. How does the child feel about it? There are so many. You don't have to go, like, deep diving with your like 5-year-old being like rainbow fish. I have a vendetta against rainbow fish.
Clearly.
But,
I like the rainbow fish
he's a
book.
jerk.
But he learns not to be.
But
And then he learns not to be. That's the moral of the story.
I also want to end on a funny note. There was a challenge I read recently. This was on a Brothers Grimm's book. It was the cover. It was because it features Little Red Riding Hood. And as for those who may not know, she's basically journeying to her grandmother's house, bringing her some much needed comfort.
Is it the cat?
No.
Who doesn't know what little...
I'm just
There's
assuming.
different versions. To be fair, the Grimm's Tale version has a cat that literally calls
No,
her a
no,
slut.
I'm just...
But,
it was
but
more of a
there's-
It's a
joke.
different meaning.
But on the cover, she has a bottle of wine in her basket, and the challenge was that it was encouraging alcoholism in children. And I will end it on that note.
And so,
And Little Red
please
Riding Hood sounded
support
real
your
cool.
local libraries, support your school libraries. Please read or really look into, like, reviews about books read by people. Goodreads is a fantastic area. There are tons of people who have read the book and will literally break it down for you, content, everything. There are parental warning websites you can go to. I highly recommend those for parents who don't have the time. Really just get involved with what they're reading and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Your children aren't going to become individuals of their own. At some point, they'll always be your baby. But at some point, they're going to stop being a baby. And they're going to form thoughts on their own. So it's a good time to walk them through it, especially now.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, pretty flatly, but yeah, censorship hurts all of us, and especially the most vulnerable and disenfranchised of us.
Yep.
Might be all good for you because you can still access what you want to access because you have money and the means to do it. But for a lot of people, they don't have that. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a negative for everyone.
Just because you don't like it, the world doesn't revolve around you.
Yep.
Doesn't mean the rest of us don't enjoy it. Harry Potter is a worldwide sensation. Just because you don't like the idea of witchcraft doesn't mean the rest of us don't think it's cool and want to be put in a house and are still waiting for their Hogwarts letter to come.
Yes.
You sound bitter about that, Amanda.
Was it boxed wine though in the Little Red Riding?
No,
Because if it's
no.
boxed wine, then you ban it.
They didn't
You know
have
what I'm
boxed
saying?
wine yet.
It was
Barrel
like
wine.
it was showing the
But if it's bottle.
entire
She was just
bottle.
rolling up the bag from the box wine.
Yeah, it was an entire bottle. So she wasn't even trying
It
to
was
hide
fancy.
it. It was fancy. It was a fancy bottle.
Handmade. So I think
If there's like a comedic version of the Little Red Riding Hood where she's strolling down there with a box wine, we should, if it's not already created, we should make that, guys.
done.
Just bringing her grandmother the worst meal.
So with that, I think we'll end the episode here. Have a
On-
great
on-
day,
on
everybody.
Sex and the City.